These seed beetles are having sex. And you might think, well, good for them. But actually, for the female, this could be very bad news. Because if we were to take a closer look at what is going on here, we would see that the male's penis, as you can see from these green images on the slide, is actually covered in these fairly horrific spines. Now, these spines help a male's sperm to compete with the sperm of other males with which this female has mated. But in the process, they make sex an absolute nightmare for the female. And the damage they cause actually reduces the total number of offspring she can produce over her lifespan. And that's not just bad for females, it's also bad for the whole population. Because of course the productivity of a population is controlled by the productivity of the females within that population. So when males harm females and reduce their productivity, this can cause population size to decrease over multiple generations, and in small populations, this can lead to local extinction. So we have a problem, and that problem is caused by the fact that male beetles are aggressive, harmful, and selfish. And you may be able to recognise some of those traits in some males from more familiar species too. So the question that my PhD is addressing is under what circumstances will males be less selfish? And to some extent, this might depend on whether they're competing with their relatives. Now, we all know that relatives share genes with each other. What this means is that if you help your relatives to reproduce and raise children, you can pass on any of those genes that you share with them, even if you do not directly reproduce yourself. So when your relatives are around, you should be less competitive. Now, because harmfulness in these male beetles is a product of competition among males, what this means is that when males are surrounded by or compete with their relatives, they should harm females less. My PhD is testing this theory by, among other things, constructing groups of males, and these males are either related or unrelated to each other. We then introduce a female to each group of males, and we measure her fitness by counting the number of offspring she can produce over her lifetime. What we found is that groups of males do harm females less when they are related to each other, but only if those males have been exposed to each other before the female is introduced. In other words, only if males are both familiar and related to each other. So the good news for female beetles is that sex is much better if males are competing with familiar relatives. And remember that what's good for the females is also good for the whole population. Thank you.